On today's Locked On Bucks, we did all the work for you. The NBA 2K25 season simulation. What does the video game have to say about the Bucks this season and the rest of the league? We dig into some rather interesting results coming up next here on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis, and we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube as well, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel now through September 22nd. Only a couple of days left on that. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just head over to FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Camille, we mentioned the season simulation. This was something we talked about doing. I don't think we talked about it on the show, but we talked about doing this a couple of weeks ago of, hey, I wonder what NBA 2K thinks about this season and how bunched up everything was as we started to get into the player ratings. So we ran one simulation, thought about, should we do multiple and say like, hey, on average out of X amount of sims, here's where the Bucks ended up finishing in the standings. Here was their most likely postseason result, but then it just got to be, it's a lot of charting and averages and a lot of time to simulate a season that many times. So we just went with one, and it produced some very interesting results. So as we were going back and forth and we talked about, okay, where did the Bucks finish? Okay, I could see that. What was the result? Yeah, I could see that. And then taking a look at the larger picture, it was, wait a minute, what happened here? So I suppose that's the place to start. Let's just get into the standings in the Eastern Conference. Maybe a show that's a little better to view on YouTube if you're one of the podcast listeners, but we're going to throw up a lot of images in this. So starting with the standings in the Eastern Conference. Here it is. The New York Knicks finished with the best record in the East at 56-26. I think both of us would say, yeah, we could. I could see that. You could talk me into it. Yeah, even though we just kind of laid out a case of, look, I think the Bucks are going to be in a better spot than the Knicks. We're talking about the regular season. Yeah, I could see the Knicks finishing there with that record or a similar one as well. They won, was it an even 50 last year?
Somewhere around there.
Then it gets very, very wonky. So the two that make the most sense here, the Knicks at the 1 seed, the Bucks at the 4 seed. Yeah, I think we've all kind of said anywhere from 2 to 5 we could see them finishing. Even the Pacers finishing 3rd, if everything went their way and they built on what they did a season ago, somebody's clearly going to take a step backward. But I think that's one you could talk folks into as well. The Miami Heat, same story. They're healthy. Jimmy Butler looked very good. Bam Adebayo continues to be a defensive force. And some of the other guys like a Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier had some big impacts for this team. Yeah, I could see them getting just out of the play-in tournament. The rest of it,
can't see it happening.
The rest of it, I think, is what makes these results very, very cloudy. And that, man, I was hoping for what we deem to be very realistic. So you could say, hey, here's what 2K thinks. The rest of the results is where you say, I don't know about this one.
Yeah, so in this particular simulation, the Atlanta Hawks finished 2nd in the East. You have the Miami Heat at 5, and then 6, 7, 8 goes Bulls, Raptors, Magic, with the Pistons in the 9 seed who were vying for a play-in spot for the playoffs. It was one of those simulations, and when you're going through it, you're like, wait a second. Okay, where is Boston and where is Cleveland? But in this particular 2K simulation, injuries hit Boston really, really hard. For some reason, when it started, 2K had Porzingis fully healthy, Porzingis actually played 82 games in this particular simulation. Meanwhile, no other Celtic played more than 65 games. So it was one of those years for the Celtics in this simulation where health was not on their side. And as for Cleveland, a similar situation where health just was not on their side. The Bucks didn't have much injury misfortune in this particular 2K simulation. Giannis was out for a brief period in time with the high ankle sprain, but he only missed like 7 games. Bobby Portis was banged up throughout the simulation, but he didn't miss many games himself. I think he only missed 7 as well. But the surprise to me was seeing that Chris Middleton played 82 games in this 2K simulation. I know some people already are like, if that's the case, this isn't real. We can't go anywhere with this. But simulation, Middleton, Brooke, Dame, and I believe it was Gary Trent Jr. all played 82 games in this particular simulation, and the Bucks were still a 4 seed. What surprised me with the standings too was just how many teams were around that 500 mark or a little bit below it, and still made it into the playoffs for the East. So it was a weird simulation for sure.
The other takeaways in terms of Bucks numbers in this season simulation, Marjon Beauchamp played 36 games. DeLon Wright also played all 82. That was enough. And Taurean Prince. So the Bucks had 6 guys, according to this, playing the full season. Marjon, 36 games played, 14 minutes played, matching, which I think is music to the ears of a lot of Bucks fans. Matching Pat Connaughton, who played 65 games, averaged 14 minutes a game, only averaged 3 points per game, and those field goal woes continued for Pat.
Oh man, he took a step back in this simulation from 3.
Yeah, that was for the Bucks specifically the most interesting part of this simulation. But you mentioned, it's there's small pieces of it that you look at and you say, I think this could be foretelling something. I could see this. The Boston and Philly piece of, look, even if Boston has a season from hell in terms of injuries with the depth that they have, I have a hard time seeing the Celtics unless Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis miss 2/3 of the season. They're still going to be better than most of what's out there with games missed, substantial games missed, that there's no way the Celtics would miss the play-in tournament. And Philadelphia, similar story there, but do you? I don't suppose you have the games played for Joel Embiid.
I do not have it right here off top, but I know it was over 70. Like Joel Embiid was fairly healthy in the simulation. It's that Maxey ruptured an Achilles early on in the season. They were without Maxey. And that was a surprise to me that yet and still they weren't able to overcome that in this particular simulation.
So very interesting results that I think are going to lead to people, and frankly, both of us saying, I don't really know about this. It gets even more interesting when we dig into what happened in the postseason and then some of the individual honors that Bucks came across during this season simulation on NBA 2K. So we will get into that conversation as the show rolls along here. It is the season simulation on NBA 2K25. Camille and I get into the rest of it after this on Locked On Bucks. Time to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. You have heard us mention them quite a bit. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you now, though. As through September 22nd, make note of that date. It is this weekend. You only have a few days left. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need to do this is a Google account and a current form of payment you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. We thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of the day. For listen number 2, we invite you to check out the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from both national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, should we just rip off the Band-Aid now and get into the postseason results?
Wait, let's give them the good news first. Let's let them know the fact that when this regular season ended in this simulation, there were some all NBA honors for Dame and for Giannis. You know, Dame was third team all NBA, Giannis was first team. Giannis was also first team all defense. And yeah, the playoffs didn't go well, so enjoy the regular season accolades from this particular simulation.
That we were talking about it before, in that first team all defense, Victor Wembanyama, which again, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens this season.
He also won Defensive Player of the Year in this simulation.
Giannis, Bam Adebayo, Rudy Gobert, sensing a trend here, and Evan Mobley. Those were your five guys selected to the first team of all defense. You mentioned some of the other teams. Dame on the third team all NBA selection there. His players joining him: Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, not making first team, despite playing a healthy amount of games, as you mentioned. Bam Adebayo and Ja Morant, a name that I would not be surprised to see back in those lists. Giannis, again, first team once again. The first team grouping, another one that I think you look at and say, this seems somewhat realistic, at least 80% of the way there. Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, and Domas Sabonis, the other one on there. No Bucks on the second team, but that was Wemby, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, and Trae Young, another possible interesting bounce back candidate. As I know, Ben Rowland was just on the Dunked On season preview for the Atlanta Hawks and had a lot of interesting things to say about where the Hawks are headed and Trae Young in general. But yes, that's the good piece. I think if we want to extend the positivity here, hey, another year where the Bucks finished in the top half of the conference in the standings in terms of home court advantage. So another top 4 seeding for this Milwaukee Bucks team that, again, Camille, if we just go back a decade ago, not only, hey, could we finish where we get home court, we longed for, could we even crack 6 instead of this annual pushing for the 7 or 8 seed? Okay, here's where it starts to go down. Let's just rip off the Band-Aid. Here are the postseason results on NBA 2K. So the Bucks as a 4 seed get the Miami Heat. Heat and Bucks finished with the same record. It was 46 and 36, I believe, for those teams. So that was your 4-5 matchup. Starting there. Look, Jimmy Butler could be off the Miami Heat. They could be down to essentially no one. I don't think there's any feeling other than anxiety that every single Bucks fan is going to have from here on out if they see the Miami Heat on the other seed line with them in the postseason. And this one, basically the same result as we saw 2 years ago. The Bucks as the higher seed. They lose in the first round of the Miami Heat in 5 games.
Only took the first game in that series, and then the Miami Heat reeled off 4 straight wins in the simulation in the first round against the Bucks. It was one of those things where I was like, not another first round exit. So like 2K is saying 3rd year in a row, a first round exit for the Milwaukee Bucks. And when I saw it, Justin, I just laughed. Like, that's all I could do in the moment. I just laughed and I said, I cannot wait to show this to Justin, that this is what 2K is saying what happened. The Hawks were a surprise team in the playoffs as well as the Raptors winning one of the play-in seeds. The Bulls, the 6th seed. It was one of those things where you're just like, this is a really interesting simulation here for this upcoming NBA season. And then, I mean, the Knicks and the Pacers meet up again in the Eastern Conference Finals, with the Knicks representing the East. And at least the finals matchup looked like it was entertaining, given that it went 7 games, with the Thunder coming out on top in this particular NBA simulation. But as for the Bucks, if this is the outcome that we see, another first round exit, me and Justin, we've talked about this for a bit now. If this is the outcome, there are going to be some big changes, projected big changes in Milwaukee coming from that.
I mean, if this is the outcome, and I suppose to be clear, even if the Bucks everything goes right for them this season, it's still still a very good chance there are big changes in the offseason just by way of the age and the contract situation for this team. But yes, under this scenario, I would not know what to expect going into the offseason, that realistically everything could be on the table for every single player on that roster to no longer be on this team. I don't know about hitting the reset button because you have no assets, right? Like it's not like, okay, let's build this thing up and go on another run with Giannis in 2 or 3 years. There's no assets. There's no draft capital for you to get and recoup there. The only way to get that is to blow up the roster. So I don't want to spend too much time thinking about that just because of the mindset that it's going to put all of us in. I'm going to quickly pivot to the West in this simulation. I could see almost to a T this entire scenario in the Western Conference. I think the only thing I would flip is the 3 and 6 seed with the Grizzlies and Warriors. But other than that, I wouldn't pick them right now in a vacuum to finish with the best record. But yeah, I could see the Dallas Mavericks as the 1 seed. We've both said we think the Suns are going to be better than they were a season ago because of what Bud is going to bring to that team. But I could see the Suns as the 8th seed, another Denver and Minnesota matchup. I could certainly see, even with both of those teams sliding down in their seeding with the way that the conference has gotten better. And, Wemby leading the Spurs to that 7 seed through the play-in tournament. That's another thing that we could see. The notable absence is the LA teams that are gone from this list, which I think everyone else would say,
it's possible.
Definitely, I could definitely see the Clippers not making it. And one of these years, LeBron is going to look like a 40-year-old player, and it's just going to start to take a massive step backwards. So the West looks pretty accurate to me.
And I should also add with the West really quick, Justin, the MVP of the league in this simulation was Luka. In this simulation, he averaged almost a triple-double for the entire season, and the Mavericks just ran through the league to the point where Jason Kidd was actually coach of the year in this simulation because the Mavericks went 65-17 in this season to lose in the Western Conference Finals to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I suppose, who would you pick right now to win the MVP this season?
Luka's a good bet for it.
That's who I would go with.
That's where I was looking at especially after last year's performance in the playoffs and getting there. The team's a bit better around them. I could definitely see Luka finally getting his first MVP.
And as we've talked about before, a lot of this it's a turns system, and it's Luka's turn. Giannis had his turn. Joker had his turn. Joel Embiid maybe only had one chance at that table, but Joel Embiid had his, and now Luka, you're the next up. It's your turn. So could definitely see that. Looking at these matchups in the East, and again, I know it's difficult for those of you listening to the podcast, so we'd encourage you to check out the video version where you can see some of these visuals. But first round matchups of the Knicks and Magic, the Pacers and Bulls, the Hawks and Raptors, the Bucks and Heat. I could see 2 of those matchups actually taking place, not with those actual seeds. If you had like a 3 versus 6, Knicks versus Magic, I think it would realistically be a 2 versus 7, Bucks versus Heat. But, looking at all of the matchups we got in the Eastern Conference, the one that is most realistic to happen, including where it occurs, I think, unfortunately, would be the Knicks and the Pacers in the conference finals.
Yeah, it could definitely be that situation again, especially depending on how the bracket falls for them and what matchups they have going into it. But the Pacers could definitely be a team where let me say it like this. There are some people who think that this past year's Indiana Pacers were like the Hawks team in that 21 run, where it's like you had a good year and that's going to be it for you. But I think that the Pacers have enough to be a consistent threat in the East this season. And if things continue to go well from them for a few more years as well, because of the core that they have locked in right now.
Yeah, it's just interesting how much unknown There is, and you have different groupings of teams where you have, as we've talked about at length, you have that tier of the Boston Celtics.
Mhm.
You have the tier of the Bucks, the Knicks, and the Sixers, who feel like we're the best to really challenge that team. And then you have another tier of teams that are on the come up. I know it's kind of tough to put Cleveland in there, and we'll get into this in much more detail as we get into season previews of those teams. But I kind of struggled putting Cleveland in they're on the come up. I get the coaching change, but we've kind of seen this for a couple of years for the Cavs. So it's not necessarily, hey, they're building to something. It's we've got to see it really
Mhm.
hit the next level now. But certainly with the Magic and the Pacers, that is the case. And that's really what makes the Eastern Conference the most fascinating. We may have said this a couple of times in the last few years, but it is definitely the most fascinating it has been in years now, the way that that conference is structured. We'll share some final thoughts on this. And I suppose we should touch on the news from the other day as well as it pertains to the league. And I suppose the Bucks, given most Bucks fans' feelings about this name. So we'll get into that conversation coming up next here on Locked On Bucks. Well, Camille, final thoughts on the season simulation. Is it something where you think, all right, there's some takeaways here, or is this just that was the first draft, let's crumple this paper up and throw it in the garbage?
Definitely crumple it up, throw it away. But one thing that did stand out to me just from the Bucks' performance in this simulation, outside of being surprised at how many Bucks players played the full 82 games and which one of those names it was actually looking at Dame's numbers in this particular simulation, because he averaged a point or two more than what he did last year in the actual league. And in the simulation, though, he was the third best 3-point shooter in the league. He shot like 45% from three this year, and it was only behind Luke Kennard and Klay Thompson. So it was one of those things where it was like interesting that, Dame, the points per game ticked up by 2 or so, but like the efficiency was there. And it made me think about what we've discussed about what does it look like when Dame is really rolling on this team. And we mentioned it might not look like 30 points a game or 35, something crazy like that, but just the efficiency at which he scores. So that was something that stood out to me in this simulation. And a comment that we have here on the live YouTube recording from Cam Sky just saying, we're going to the dark ages if we lose another first round, which was a feeling that I had as well. Like, we cannot go out in the first round again for this particular Bucks team. So all in all, it was a really interesting simulation to do. It made me laugh at a few points. And it kind of just was like, this would be a really interesting way for things to shake out. Again, I don't foresee a situation where Boston and Philly miss out on top 8 seeds. But for the Bucks being like, they were pretty much fourth in the conference throughout the entire simulation. Like, they did not move too much out of that spot. When Giannis got hurt in the simulation, they dropped down to, I think, 5 or 6, but then they bounced right back up to 4th in the East and really stayed there throughout the season. So I don't know if this is the season the Bucks get. It's going to be a tough one. There are definitely some bright spots in it, but all in all, not the outcome that anybody is looking for.
If this is the season the Bucks get, I'm taking it back to the store and I'm demanding a refund. Honestly, the last thing to touch on with the individual stuff here is we put it up on the screen, but Giannis's scoring comes down. What, about 4 points per game there? You mentioned Dame and the lift that he got, but Chris Middleton averaged basically what he did a season ago. Gary Trent Jr.'s production by 2K's math replicates and replaces what Malik Beasley gave you, almost down to the decimal point. Brook Lopez's scoring takes a bit of a step back at under 10 points per game, under 9. But Bobby Portis, 13.5 points per game. I think that's right around what he averaged a season ago. And even DeLon Wright was at about 5 or 6 points per game last year. And that's, kind of right where he is with his career average. So that's the one I'm curious to see what his scoring load is going to be. Not that he's going to be a volume scorer, but we anticipate DeLon Wright is going to be in a lot of closing lineups and have those opportunities. And if you're playing on the floor with Giannis, with Damian Lillard, with Chris Middleton, and who knows, depending on the lineups, maybe we do see as we kind of asked for a little bit there, of Giannis at the 5, Chris at the 4, and you go with Gary Trent Jr. at the 3, DeLon Wright and Dame in the backcourt, you're going to get a lot of clean, good looks in those situations. So I'm curious to see what his scoring total is going to be this season. But yes, we looked forward to this, and then as we got the results, we thought, I don't know, should we have done this? So interesting practice here on the season simulation. I mentioned there was some news, and I don't know about you, Camille, but when this news came out, was it yesterday or 2 days ago already? The bomb.
I think it was 2 days ago at this point.
Yeah, I think it was Wednesday. I got the push notification from multiple entities and had to read it like 2 or 3 times.
Same.
Wait, what? This is a notification? I need this as a notification that Adrian Wojnarowski is retiring. I assumed it was, holy cow, who got traded now? As soon as you get the ESPN push and ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, like, whoa, who just got dealt? Was it Brandon Ingram? Was it someone else? I mean, look, good for him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just tone it down on the pity parties of he wanted his life back and he got sick of working holidays and having to do this and always having to take a phone with him into the bathroom so he doesn't miss a call. I mean, all right, it's no different from what a lot of us deal with, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of Bucks fans that are too sad to see the news of Woj's retirement given the offseason of 2020.
Mm-hmm. There are still some hard feelings there because Woj and his fast fingers on the tweets saying that the Bucks were going to be getting Bogdanovich as well from the Hawks, and then that didn't work out, and then the tampering thing. And then my whole thing with that has been consistently after that moment of watching other teams when they get hit with tampering charges and whatnot, what their punishment is. And I'm like, we didn't even get the guy and you took a second from us, but like the Bulls and Lonzo, and they still lose a second, but neither here.
Knicks, the Heat,
yeah, at the moment.
Sixers were the big one with PJ Tucker.
Another one where it's like the punishment doesn't make sense, but I'm not trying to get worked up on this Friday morning about past injustices. So as for Woj retiring, yeah, it was a Woj bomb that I did not expect to see at all. And when I saw it, I was like, wow. So the last thing that he broke was about Isaac Okoro going back.
And Isaac Okoro tweeted that too.
That was the last straw. You know what? I'm staying up for what? For Okoro?
This is what I'm sacrificing dinners and everything else for. And
nah, I can't
binging the new Menendez Brothers docuseries.
Right.
Like, that's what I'm sacrificing this for now. I'm
right. But no, best wishes to Woj in his next phase. I mean, like he changed the game for how Twitter was done. Like, I think most NBA fans
for better or worse, yeah.
Woj notifications on because you knew when you saw that name pop up, it was going to be some big news. The Woj versus Shams line that we've had over the last couple of years, and seeing who would break the news first, and seeing how they word things and everything. So it was fun. And Woj retiring from this particular role, I mean, that's a big loss for NBA news. Like, that's just something that has become synonymous with like breaking NBA news. A Woj bomb. Like, he had a whole thing named after him and what he does and how he breaks the news. So best wishes to him. As you mentioned, he said he wanted more time back. And I would never want to be an insider. That seems far too stressful for me. So shout out to him for doing it as long as he did as well, because that's a lot on the plate to take. So best wishes to him going forward, being the GM at his alma mater. And hopefully that works out for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's also funny to me. I know it is a thing. It's not like Woj is the first, but general managers of college programs is a thing now. That's the interest because of NIL and everything else that you deal with. So best of luck to him on that. It is an interesting fit. I mean, if Woj wasn't a St. Bonaventure alum,
it's like, what?
What's the background here that you can run this other than I broke news stories? I will say the thing that I am happiest for about this as a regular consumer of things like NBA Today and other visual pieces on ESPN, he's a great insider. He is far from that on TV. So getting that off of our television will be certainly welcome. And I don't want to turn this into a political take on anything, but the best thing that Woj ever did was an email to a political figure. So if you're unfamiliar, look that up. And that's how I'll always remember Adrian Wojnarowski.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, being a part of Twitter, and I've been on Twitter, well, the website formerly known as Twitter at this point, since like, I'm going to age myself.
Still call it Twitter, Camille. I do.
I mean, you know, I've been on that site since like 2009. So like Woj has been a big part of just my NBA experience in itself. So not having him breaking the news is going to take some getting used to. And I do wonder as well, like who that next guy is going to be for ESPN to be like their NBA insider.
Well, isn't Sham's contract up or coming up? Like I know he left Stadium.
I didn't know that.
And I think The Athletic, I don't remember about The Athletic one, so don't quote me on that. I should text Eric. But I believe his contract is coming up, that it would make the most sense of Shams as the guy that's going to replace Woj. And you've started to see that Jake Fisher is being linked to possibly go to The Athletic. I think he also hinted at something yesterday on the podcast he did with Dan Devine. So I wouldn't be shocked if it just becomes musical chairs and Jake Fisher goes from Yahoo and gets the bump up to The Athletic or elsewhere, and Shams is the one that ultimately replaces.
It wouldn't be the first time either, because wasn't Shams behind Woj initially?
He was with him at Yahoo. He's basically, Woj was his mentor.
Yeah, so wouldn't be the first time we've seen him step into Woj's shoes and run with that role.
Point being, there's an opening, Camille, if you're interested to live that NBA insider lifestyle. But yeah, I mean, no, it's nothing I'd want to sign up for. Like I know we kind of joked. I credit to Adrian Wojnarowski for saying, yeah, I'd rather have a normal life and work a different job and deal with that than everything that he had to go through. I mean, as much as we kid about it, it was part of the job. It's not for me. I think it's not for a lot of the audience to kind of deal with that. But can we tone it down on all the other sports insiders that are basically doing a eulogy and a hagiography over Adrian Wojnarowski and how much of a hero he was for dealing with this? Like, okay, we get it. He retired. It was a sacrifice. I don't need you to beat me over the head with it.
Yeah, he's been getting like a 21 gun salute from like all of the other insiders.
21 tweet salute. Just fired them off. Well, and that was the thing too about Twitter in its infancy, where, I saw a few people point this out. But Woj, others, like you would be able to DM these guys.
Yeah.
And you'd get responses. They'd get in your DMs and reply to you. I mean, good luck ever seeing that again with you can't DM anyone unless you follow each other and everything else. But that was the thing that if you're just getting into it now, I don't think you'll ever fully grasp and comprehend what Twitter meant in terms of the access, that you had to some of these people.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm not on Woj's level, but I see every tweet that comes my way, and I tend to respond to most of them as well. No, my DMs are locked up because if you're gonna say something crazy, you say it for the whole world to see.
Mine are open, and I try to respond to everything. It's when it becomes what do you want me to say here?
Yeah.
Like that's when it's a no-go for me. But we got a lot more coming up next week, as Monday marks 1 week away from Media Day. So we're going to start our push towards full-on previewing the season. Once Media Day occurs, we're going to have a lot of takeaways to come from that and what was said on that day. I'll be there at Media Day. We also, I don't want to give away too much. I think we're going to have a special guest coming up here that we have not had on the show before, and certainly a name that Bucks fans will recognize. I think we're going to do a bit of a crossover episode with this individual and someone else that they do a show with. So we have that looming on the horizon as well. Frank is going to be back as well. Not quite sure the dates, but get into some of our over-unders within the Bucks. So a lot coming up here. Is next week is it in the final sprint towards the season is here. Next week is the last week you have where it feels like we're in a content wasteland of what do we talk about and what's going on with the Bucks and what's going on across the league. Once you get to Monday, September 30th, that is over with. So it is basically the last chance you have for us, for all the viewers and listeners as well, to rest and recoup, because the sprint is going to start on September 30th. If you have not already, share the show, the channel with someone else. Subscribe, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment on YouTube as well. We've done a better job. I know that was one of the gripes that a lot of fans had, of getting to those comments. But leave your thoughts on this episode about Woj, if you have any Woj stories, but certainly the season simulation as well. That will do it for today's show, though. For Camille, I am Justin. We'll talk to you once again Monday on Locked On Bucks.